Hi, my name is Carrie Jordon. This is a reworked version of Chapter 1 based on some feedback I got. I've changed a few of the species names and stuff like that because they were very wordy. So my goal was to shorten it. So they've gone from Shalatari and Sognanti to Chiron and Velantri. I'm testing it out. We'll see. I decided also this is from first person rather than third person. It's been a long time since I've written in first person. This is my first very rough draft. Chapter 1, Theodora's point of view. Unlike the hardy Chiron, pre-adolescent Velantri must be trained to wield their mana. In the case that appropriate wielding education is not available at the time their mana awakens, it is paramount that rudimentary wielding techniques be taught expeditiously in adolescence. Remedial education can mitigate further damage, but cannot treat irreversible disability induced by mana crises. Kendall N., Mana Awakening and Crisis in Voluntary Adolescence. The Importance of Early Wielding Education in Preventing Chronic Disability. University of Canberra Journal of Human Medicine. Moonlight streamed through the paneled glass of my bedroom windows as I laid in my bed, completely and utterly exhausted. The drumming ache in my bones told me what I already knew. I overdid it today. Everyone knew that attending William's wake would be too much for me, but as usual, I didn't listen, and this was my punishment. Dad warned me not to go. He was afraid the servants might be disturbed by my presence. He was just a guard, Theodora, he'd said. I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this. But I was selfish and showed up anyway, determined to pay respects to my oldest friend. I squeezed my eyes tight, twisting beneath my quilt. I'll be paying for that later, I'm sure. I sniffled, a painful twinge of grief filling my chest again. Physical pain was like an old friend, but the grief that seemingly weighed my bones down with boulders was new and already seemed impossible to live with. I hated learning new types of pain when I thought I already knew what to expect each day. This loss, this tight, suffocating feeling beneath my breastbone, was an unwelcome visitor in my life. It was a final lesson I never asked for from a man who had already sacrificed far too much for somebody like me. I had no future. He knew that from the start. I was born broken into a world where people like me were culled, as physical deformities were both unsightly and an indication that our weak flesh couldn't act as an adequate mana conduit. I hated that William's kindness was wasted on me rather than with his grandson, who he spoke so highly of but seemed to see so little. I reached for the tunic I squirreled away from William's quarters after his wake, burying my face in the tightly woven fabric. Tears prickled behind my eyelids and threatened to spill over. My longing for just one more warm hug was overwhelming. I could almost feel his signature bear hug. I wish there was a way that I could have known which one of those hugs would be the last, just so I could have held him for just a little while longer. If I knew, I would have closed my eyes and memorized what it felt like, tucking the memory away in my mind for safekeeping. Instead, I was left only with his old tunic, his scent already fading from it. The comfort of his scent was the only thing stronger than the spasming muscles in my back and the boulders of grief on my chest after his wake, lulling me to a fitful sleep that didn't even last until dawn. Another shooting pain from hip to toe took hold of my right side, my calf and thigh muscles clenching and unclenching. I grit my teeth and sucked in air. The thing about chronic pain is that it's always there, hence the word chronic. I couldn't remember a time in my life that pain hadn't accompanied me like a dutiful chaperone, but I do remember the steep shift in severity when I had my crisis 8 harvests ago. Since then, it always seemed like my pain would peak on the days where I thought that things couldn't possibly get any worse. A tap on my shoulder always dragged me back to my reality by force. I knew this was the sort of pain that got worse the more time I spent still, sitting or lying down. That's okay, I thought. It's not like I was going to actually sleep tonight anyway. I got up slowly, wincing as I stood. Dragging my feet against the weathered hardwood floor, I stepped into the bathroom and grabbed my partial dental prosthesis from the crystal glass next to the sink, rinsed it, and pressed it to the roof of my mouth. I knew the odds of running into anybody in the halls at this hour was unlikely, but I wouldn't risk it. What a stupid way that would be to die after surviving all those operations to reconstruct my lip. The thought made me laugh out loud before groaning at the pulsing migraine that followed. Gods, I must really need sleep. Another night, I told myself, I'll sleep when I've earned it or when I'm dead, whichever comes first, I guess. I ran my tongue over my teeth, feeling the porcelain replacements for my missing lateral incisors before biting down to check the fit. I bared my teeth at the looking glass on the wall, my eyes mapping out the pink seam of where my gums ended and the partial began. The pink resin had discolored over time. I was long overdue for a replacement. I froze there for a moment, anxiety squeezing my throat as I internally rehearsed how the conversation with Dad might go if I were to let him know I needed a replacement. William usually acted as a buffer for those conversations, and the thought of doing it on my own felt like more trouble than it was worth. Another jolt of pain reminded me that that was a problem for future me, so I grabbed my coat and made my way out into the hall. It took only a few minutes of wandering through the cold estate halls before I stared down the imposing wooden door to William's quarters, shifting from side to side in an attempt to fight against the cold night air that seeped in through the threadbare spots in my coat. The Everflame lanterns cast dancing shadows across it, making the worn wood look more ominous than it did during the day. I tried the handle. It was locked, which was surprising as I had left it unlocked when I snuck in last night. I sighed, gingerly easing myself into the hard, cold cobblestone. Some Vellantri could pick locks with a flick of their wrist, but I was not one of them. My mana crisis had rendered me incapable of anything beyond rudimentary wielding, and even that took a lot more out of me than I was typically willing to give. Lucky for me, being raised in an ancient estate with dozens of locked rooms I was forbidden from entering gave me plenty of time to figure out how to get into them. I made quick work of the lock, listening for the characteristic click of the final binding pin shifting into place. I tried the handle and felt a fleeting swell of mischievous pride when I was able to push the heavy door open. I tried to ignore the pang of guilt that came with it. Every time my parents caught me doing something I was forbidden to do, which was admittedly a common occurrence, William always used to pinch my cheek and tell me to use my mind for good, not evil. What I wouldn't do for him to scold me just one more time. I let the door close softly behind me and made my way over to the wardrobe at the far end of the room. I rifled through the drawers until I found one of my favorite tunics of his. It was the one I embroidered for his birthday a few harvests ago. The corner of my lip quirked up as my fingers found a stitching that said "old fart" right where the fabric laid over his heart. My hands began to tremble and my vision blurred, the tears coming fast now as my throat grew tight again. Through weary eyes, I gathered the old fart tunic in my arms with a few others before pushing the wardrobe door shut with an elbow. My shoulders sagged, the tunics heavy in my arms as I was hit with a wave of exhaustion. I buried my face in the pile of tunics and took a deep breath in, but I was dismayed to find my nose was far too clogged to smell the faint scent of pine so characteristic of my old friend. At least this time I grabbed several. It was only a matter of time before Dad had the room cleared out and a new occupant moved in, was what that was supposed to say. Moved in. The moment I turned to step toward the door, I felt a hand grab my ankle.